UK, and this is episode 18 of Philosopher Rock. But it could very well also be considered an episode of 4550 RPM. Stay tuned to find out why. In this episode, I'm joined by my guest Adrian, aka Aussie Ade, to talk about the history of Birmingham bands, or simply Brum music. Birmingham in the UK has produced some very talented artists in the realm of music, so we are going to discuss some of them and touch on why Birmingham is the centre of musical talent that it is. Now, we won't be able to cover every single muso to come out of Brum, but we will hit some of the well-known and perhaps lesser-known Brum talents, including, but not limited to, the following: Steve Winwood, Traffic, The Move, ELO, Led Zeppelin, that's going to be a controversial one, the Moody Blues, Chrstine Mcvie, Dexys Midnight Runners, Duran Duran, and so many more. So this will be a two-part episode, and this is part one. Please remember to like and subscribe, and also to comment. And especially comment if there is someone from Birmingham we missed that you think we should have included. Okay, let's go to my discussion of Brum music with Aussie Ade. Alrighty, well, here we are back on 4550 RPM and Philosopher Rock. This is going to be a bit of a combined show on both of my brands, but with me on the line, I have Aussie Ade. Now, Aussie Ade's joining me to talk about all things Birmingham music scene, historic, and I guess up into recent times. So welcome to the show, Aussie Ade.
Hello, GK. How are you going?
Oh, I'm doing good, mate. It's good to have you on board. We've been talking about doing this for a little while, and so I'm glad we're finally getting around to it. But before we get into it, just tell my listeners a little bit about yourself, like who you are and what you're about.
Okay, well, I kind of blew the intro because I should have said, all right, Bab, because I'm from Birmingham. But hello, all right, Bab.
My name is Adrian. I've lived in Birmingham all my life, apart from the last 9 years. I've been married to a lovely lady for 20 years now. We met in Birmingham. She is Australian. We moved to Australia 9 years ago. We initially lived in Sydney for the first couple of years with family, and now we live on the south coast of New South Wales, and it's a short walk to the beach. We have a son who's amazing, and he's now 15. We also have a dog who you may hear snoring next to me. I work as a graphic designer, mostly from home since COVID, but going to Sydney a couple of days a week. With my graphic design background, I seem to have been involved in promoting friends' music, mostly from Birmingham, designing promo stuff for alternative bands, singer-songwriters, background music, weirdo folk music, hip-hop crews, disco collectives, and even apocalyptic indie rock bands.
And so just backtrack a little bit. Your son is a bass player, right? He's playing bass.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, he's picked up the bass. He's playing the bass. Yeah,
nice.
Yeah.
And from where you are, just for interest's sake, like I know where you are on the south coast. So how long does it take you to get into Sydney? Because you work in the heart of Sydney, don't you? And it's a big city. So
yeah, I work near the airport, and I usually get the train, and it's about just under 2 hours on trains, and there's probably like a 20-minute walk. I usually walk. That's my exercise. I usually walk from home to the station, which is about 20 minutes, and then about a 10-minute walk to where I work.
Well, I'll just say that the connection that you and I have comes through a Birmingham band that we're going to talk about later. We leave then till last, so we'll leave that till last.
Okay.
Our connection there, we met through that band. Let that be a little bit of mystery. You've got to listen to the end. So, hey, listen, for people that don't know, including me, tell us a bit about Birmingham. What the general info? Like, I know it's in the centre. You know, it's probably, I think it's the UK's second largest city. But tell us a bit about Birmingham itself, just in general, where it is, what life's like there, because you live there.
Yeah. Birmingham. It's located in the West Midlands region of England. It's the UK's second largest city. It's known for its rich industrial history. It's played a key role during the Industrial Revolution. Today, it boasts a diverse cultural scene with a vibrant mix of art, music, and cuisine. It's also got a bankrupt city council. Landmarks would be the Boring Shopping Centre, the museum and art gallery. It had an iconic library. I reckon it still has an iconic library, but they pulled the 60s one down. There's a Mr. Egg, it might still be there. I don't know. It's been 9 years, but that was kind of a greasy spoon I liked. It's got 3 universities now. And Birmingham is renowned for its canals, often referred to as the Venice of the North. Yes, Birmingham has more canals than Venice. Of course, anyone that knows Birmingham will be aware of its superiority to the famous Italian city. There are a few other things it has over Venice. Birmingham has a high score with word in Scrabble than Venice. Birmingham is a better place to see multi-storey car parks than Venice. Birmingham has more world-renowned chocolate factories than Venice. Obviously, Cadbury's chocolate. We could get into a debate, right, GK? Because Tasmania reckons they've got the Cadbury's factory.
Yeah, Tasmania, big claims on Cadbury's chocolate factory. And up until a couple of years ago, people used to come here as tourists just to go through the factory. I think they've stopped the tours, and there's some talk of it starting again. But it was a big draw for people. Like, I remember when I lived on Tasmanian's other island, which is where you are, up there in the north. I lived up there.
Yeah.
And that little place, that little island to the north of Tasmania. And we had neighbours who flew to Tasmania just to go through the chocolate factory. So Tasmania's got a big focus on that. A little bit less now because I don't think they do the tours, but that's a good
okay.
Up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But no, it originated from Bourneville in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Birmingham's a bit more popular now because they've had the Commonwealth Games there in 2022 and the Peaky Blinders TV series, which was kind of set around the canals in Birmingham because it's used for transporting goods, I guess illegal goods, but it was there to support the industry with, coal and textiles and things like that. But now it's just a bit more, they were kind of run down for years and now people can go on them and walk by them without being chucked in. Cliff Richard, if you know who that is, British singer, actor, tennis enthusiast, not from Birmingham. He did a film in Birmingham called Take Me High. I think it was in 73 or 74. And his character is in London. He's supposed to go to get a job in New York or was being transferred, but then he gets transferred to Birmingham instead. And he ends up living on a canal boat in Birmingham. And that film flopped, I think, and that was the end of his film career. So there we go.
So if you want to be a star in the movies, probably don't shoot one in the canals in Birmingham.
No, maybe not. But Birmingham has been used quite a lot in films over the years. Spielberg did his film Ready Player One, which is probably mostly on a green screen. But when he needed the kind of post-apocalyptic look, that was Birmingham. So yeah, a lot of films have done a lot of films like that where they shot it in the back streets of Birmingham.
Well, the little bit I know about it is besides music is that this is from an Aussie point of view. I haven't been there. My son and his wife been living in the UK now for 5 years, and it's his second stint over there. He's lived over there before. Did you get to meet him?
I didn't.
Supposed to meet at a gig or something.
Yeah, that was right. And then I think he was late or something happens.
Well, I think he flew out from the UK from that trip. But anyway, that was a long time ago. But listen, the thing I know, and he did tell me about Bourneville, the smell of the chocolate in the air, right?
Oh yeah, I think he stayed in Bourneville, right, that night. I think.
Yeah. And he said you can smell the chocolate from the factory, smell it in the air. So the thing I know, mate, is that this is from my point of view. You've got, the huge centre of London, and then you've got Liverpool, and you sort of got Birmingham is in between the two. Was that right to put it that way?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's in the Midlands or the West Midlands. Yeah.
Yeah, and is that why? Is there some reason for that geographical space? Why so much good music came out and still coming out of there? Is it that crush between that Mersey sound and then the London sound, and then you've got Birmingham in between. What do you think? Why there's so many, and we're going to talk about them in a minute, please just be patient, but because there's so many, and we won't be able to get to them all, but why did so many good musos and music come out of Brum?
Oh, well, I think it's down to the cultural diversity. So Birmingham, like I said, is one of the UK's most multicultural cities. And I think that's created a melting pot of musical influences. That has encouraged creativity and experimentation. And like there's an example, there's a band we're going to talk about whose original lineup, ethnic makeup, was pretty diverse. Okay, so we had English, Welsh, Irish, Jamaican, Scottish, and Yemeni parentage. So I think that kind of combination, and partly it's also down to the working environment. I think down to escapism as well, trying to get out of the place. So. Right,
because it's fair to say it's a working class city, and it is and always has been, right?
Yeah. There was loads of factories, which it's just shops now, everywhere else.
Yeah, like everywhere else.
Yeah, but there was a lot of stuff being made and built there. Yeah. Hey, I was never much into Birmingham growing up. Birmingham had a bad rap with the rest of the UK for being dark and dingy, and for our bad accents. I haven't really got a strong Birmingham accent. I had one as a kid. I've heard recordings of myself, but I don't know where I lost it. But it's still there. But it might be a bit more Aussie now. It's probably a bit more Aussie because I'm talking to you, but there we go. But if you were travelling from London to Liverpool or Manchester or somewhere in Scotland by train, you'd always pass or take a pit stop in Birmingham City's main railway station, which was always dank and dark. And I think most of the UK people got that impression from travelling to the other cities. The same applied if you were taking a coach or a bus. Those stations were pretty gross too. I had an Irish friend who I met when I was at college who had moved to Birmingham via a 7-year stint in Germany. His parents were missionaries. He helped me change my mind about the area. He had always had a positive spin on the place and was always excited about what was going on, what was happening, or what was accessible. So maybe that explains a bit more. Birmingham's still got a kind of bad reputation, or it's kind of made a joke of, last time I checked. But so it's always kind of Liverpool or Manchester had the music scenes, with the Beatles in Liverpool, and the Manchester had like the Smiths and Joy Division and New Order and I guess Oasis. And so, Birmingham was always left out on all that stuff.
But as we're about to discuss, that ain't necessarily so. So let me kick off with one of the well-known Birmingham products in the music scene. I'll repeat myself here. We're not going to get into everybody and everything about them, but we'll just give you a bit of a taste. But I want to talk about Steve Winwood. Is a Birmingham product, and so he was born in 1948 in Birmingham, and he's most widely known for having been at a very early age in the Spencer Davis group, Traffic and Blind Faith, and also a solo career. But that he was at the age of 14, he was playing in pubs and that alongside his brother and his father in Birmingham. I read that apparently he was only 14 years old, so that they turned the piano around so that he couldn't be seen, right? Because he was a piano player, and he's multi-instrumentalist. He plays piano, keyboards, guitar, and sax and bass, but they turned the piano around because he was underage, so he couldn't be seen when he was performing in the pubs. But in 1963, him and his brother joined the Spencer Davis group, right? And he's only 14 years old. And so his brother, Muff Winwood, was the bass player. And I think Spencer Davis had seen the Winwood brothers playing at a pub called the Golden Eagle in Birmingham. Does it still exist? Have you ever heard of it?
I haven't. I'm guessing it probably doesn't.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know this is a bit before your time, being a young fella that you are. But so, him and his brother joined the Spencer Davis group, and so they issued a couple of singles early on that were covers, but they really shot to fame when they released Keep On Running. Now, it was such a huge hit Here we go, Birmingham. It knocked the Beatles' song Day Tripper off the charts. So in January 66, little old Spencer Davis Group comes and knocked the Beatles off the charts, and they had another huge hit, was Gimme Some Lovin', and I think that's the one they're probably best known for. But both those songs, you can go on YouTube and view them, and go and look at, especially Kick On Running, where you see Steve Winwood is so young. Like, he's probably, 17 by then. I'm not sure, 17 or 18 by then, but he's just so young to be in this, this up-and-coming band. But what happened was, while they were having that bit of success, him and his brother had decided to leave the band and sort of go in different directions. I think Steve Winwood wanted to a different sound, move on to something else. So he left the band and he went on to form Traffic with Dave Mason, Jim Capaldi, and Chris Wood. And he was from another band called Locomotive from Birmingham. I think you were going to talk about them, mention them later.
I think, we're just going to mention him in passing.
So another front band, Locomotive, he was from them. So we come to April 1967 and Traffic is formed. And, for me personally, I didn't catch on to Traffic until the late 70s. I found this cassette in a record shop, and I thought it was one of those ones where you go, hey, that looks cool, right? And so you take a punt, and you buy it. And so that's how I came into knowing a little bit about Traffic in the late 70s, but totally different sound to the Spencer Davis Group. And I really think that this different sound is what Steve was looking for, something different other than the Spencer Davis Group. And they really did a little bit of a psychedelic rock sound that they had. They moved into that later on. But there's like a bit of prog rock there, touches of folk, a little bit of everything that, like I say, I think he was looking for in that time. So he did a couple of stints with them from 1967 to 1969, and then again in 70 to 74. And their most well-known album is John Barleycorn Must Die, but I'll get to that in a minute, because while he was with them, he actually was leaning towards this other group when it ended up being a super group, right, that he ended up forming called Blind Faith. Now, that was with Eric Clapton and Ginger Baker from Cream, and Steve Winwood from Traffic, and a guy called Rick Gretsch from Family, right? Now, the thing about that guy is he left Family mid-tour in the USA to join this new supergroup. So it was a big attraction for him to, hey, this is going to be better for me than sticking with Family. And I would say that they probably weren't too impressed, just my opinion, that mid-tour in the USA, he does the bolt back to the UK and joins this new supergroup. Now, I think because their management wanted them, because they were a supergroup, to get into writing, rehearsing, and let's produce some hits, right? Let's get right into it. But the band themselves, they didn't see themselves as a supergroup. They didn't want to be labelled as a supergroup. They were more about the music. They wanted more time to produce, write songs, rehearse, produce, and click together. But they were kind of, this is my opinion, how I read it, they were sort of rushed into producing. And so in July 69, Blind Faith released their one and only album. Now, you can go and see and listen on YouTube, the Blind Faith. It's pretty darn good music there. It's amazing, really, and sad they only did the one album. The Blind Faith album topped the charts in the UK and Billboard's pop charts in the USA. It was huge. There's a lot of controversy over the original album cover. I'm not going to show it, and I'm not going to talk about it here. It was controversial in its day, but today, now, it would be even more controversial, and I'm just going to leave that there. So in the USA, it was just a generalised photo of the band as the album cover, and I don't know who thought it would be a good idea to go with that original one, but I did have to mention it because it is a huge part of Blind Faith's story. Anyway, the album charted hugely in both USA and UK, and I guess the standout track is Steve Winwood's penned song, Can't Find My Way Home. It's a beautiful song, but I also recommend going back and listen to, on the same album, Clapton wrote the song Presence of the Lord. It's a beautiful song. They're both well worth listening to get an idea what Blind Faith is about if you don't know. So Blind Faith was very short-lived, and they disbanded in August '69. And then for a little while, Steve Winwood was in Ginger Baker's Air Force, which is another great group if you go back and have a listen to their stuff. He also did, he started work on a solo project, but that solo project became Traffic's album, John Barleycorn Must Die. Now, this album saw their return as a group because they'd been on hiatus while Steve was in Blind Faith. It's their highest rated album in the USA. It's kind of jazzy, proggy, with touches of folk. It's a lot more loose musically than previous Traffic releases. It's definitely worth a listen. But I think for our Brum band and discussion here, I think it's a good one to point out that Steve Winwood definitely with Blind Faith, Traffic, and especially Spencer Davis Group, a great product out of Birmingham music scene, and one that you've got to discuss because if you miss out, you're doing the whole Brum scene a disservice. So over to you, mate. What did you want to talk about? You're going to take us way back. You're going to get...
Yeah. Just one, just quickly, 1920 to present. City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, the CBSO, right? So they've been knocking around since 1920, and they're brilliant. And so their biggest time probably was when Sir Simon Rattle was the principal conductor, and that was between 1980 to 1998, and that's kind of when they got the global status. So thank you, CBSO. I've seen them quite a bit in my time in Birmingham. Okay. So yeah,
I must be okay. See some of those old fellas, 100 years old, still performing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, you did say 1920, so
yeah, I did. Yeah. All right, so Moody Blues. So I'm hoping people have heard of them. They're pretty global. English rock bands, right? 1964, and they blended rock and classical music. And on my notes, I think it's incorrect. It says Justin Hayward, John Lodge, and Graham Edge and Denny Lane were the founding members, but Justin Hayward didn't show up, I don't think, till the second album. And Denny Lane, he'd cleared off by then because he later co-founded Wings with Paul McCartney and Lennon McCartney.
Yes,
yeah. Anyway, but he was the lead singer on the Magnificent Moodies in 1965, and he was educated at Yardley Grammar School in Birmingham, and he took up guitar as a boy under the influence of the gypsy jazz legend Django Reinhardt. I mentioned him because Django, because there's going to be somebody else that was influenced by him as well. And so, beat to Steve Winwood. At the age of 12, Denny Lane began his first solo performance, and he had a career as Denny Lane and Diplomats, which also included Future Move and ELO drummer Bev Bevan. Okay, so Moody Blues, the big time with their Days of Future Past album in 1967, which had the iconic hit Nights in White Satin.
Oh, yeah.
And they pioneered the use of the
massive. That was huge. New Zealand, Australia. I'm old enough to kind of remember it, but not say that. Anyway, go on.
Yeah.
It was a massive hit.
Yeah, and it celebrates one of the first concept albums, because it combines lush orchestral arrangements with rock elements. Did I say the Mellotron is in there as well? Yeah. And,
So a few of the Brum bands used the Mellotron very early on.
Yeah.
And I saw the New Zealand band Ragnarok, and they were using the Mellotron right into the 70s. It's a fantastic instrument. Well worth going to YouTube and seeing how a Mellotron works, because I can't explain it to you. But it's a great sound. A lot of bands from that era looking for that different sound a little bit before, actual synthesizers and all of that were available. Mellotron was the go-to.
Yeah, because I always associate the Mellotron with kind of like sci-fi sounds. But I've actually watched a few older films recently that weren't sci-fi, like Spellbound. I think it was a Hitchcock film, and there was another film I watched as well that was older. That was using the Mellotron with that kind of sci-fi sound before, and it's like, this is kind of interesting that we're using that. But anyway,
it's a great instrument to see people playing live. It's got a great sound. It's one of those concerts I've never forgotten. In Hamilton, in New Zealand, I saw Ragnarok. I think it might have been 1975, I think. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, so they had some timeless classics as well. as well as Nights in Whitechapel, they've got Tuesday Afternoon and Your Wildest Dreams. Actually, there'll be a good band for you to cover on Philosopher Rock, because they explore philosophical themes and poetic imagery. So there might be one for your other show. And they've sold like over 70 million albums. So they're probably one of the best-selling bands in history. And they've been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think, in 2018. And they've got their stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame as well. So, yeah, I think they're probably bigger in the US than they were in the UK.
Well, they definitely reached Australia and New Zealand, because I remember them. Nights in White Satin, that really got flogged on the radio. I mean, it was just, and even years later, it was replayed so many times, so a big one.
Yeah, when growing up, I grew up as a kid in the 80s and 90s, and a lot of 60s music was popular in the 80s, and so I used to hear it a lot. I loved it as well. I was going to move on to Plant and Bonham, and I should have to explain this because, when you get into Judas Priest, people get upset sometimes from people from Birmingham or the Black Country, the West Midlands, because Judas Priest were from West Bromwich, and that's only like 7 miles up the road from Birmingham. And if a band's coming to play a hometown gig, they're going to play in Birmingham. Anyway, Robert Plant was born in Halesome, which is 8 miles away from Birmingham city centre, town there. And then he lived in West Bromwich, which is 6 miles away from Birmingham city centre. And then John Bonham was from Redditch, and that's about 15 miles away from Birmingham. And they're, people know who Plant and Bonham are. They're the West Midlands part of Led Zeppelin. Yeah.
This is that argument, you could say, the birthplace of heavy metal, because we're going to talk about in a minute, but Black Sabbath out of Birmingham, and you got those two, let's call them Birmingham boys, it's roughly okay to say that go on to join Led Zeppelin, right? So you've got your big three from that era and the birth of heavy metal, Deep Purple, Black Sabbath, and Led Zeppelin. Well, half of those members of those bands come out of the Birmingham area. Let's say Birmingham area. There you go.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I remember going to see Audio Slave, who Chris Cornell from Soundgarden was in at the time, and that was played in Wolverhampton, near Birmingham, and he was just saying how last time he played there, Robert Plant was in the audience, and they were doing a cover of a Zeppelin song, and he was a bit nervous about that, but it all went fine. Okay, so yeah, I had Locomotive down. I don't know very much about these. Yeah. So they blended rock and blues and they had some psychedelic influences, and they gained attention with their single "Rudy's in Love," which at this time I don't think I've heard. I may know if I heard it.
I don't know.
Do you know that one? No, okay. Yeah, they went for about 5 years, from 1965 to 1970. And then I think I'm good for now. I think it's over to you with the Move, right?
Yeah, I want to talk about Move. Now, personally for me, Move, I love the Move. And it's one of those personal things, because it's one of the bands that my wife and I have in common that we like. It's really rare, apparently, but it's really good when, your wife, husband, life partner, whatever you want to, they're into some of the same bands as you, because, you can chuck the record on and enjoy it together instead of the other person tapping their foot, waiting for they can play their record, right? Bit of a joke there. But the Move, they were formed in Birmingham, 1965. And the thing about them, if you're going, well, who's the Move? They had 9 top 20 hits in the UK, just over a short period of 5 years. They're not widely known in the USA, which is a bit sad, but if you're in the USA and listening to this, go and have a listen to some of the Move. It's sort of Spotify and YouTube or wherever you get your good music. Unusual thing about the Move is they had, at one time, they had 4 lead singers in the band, right? And so the best known would be Roy Wood. We're going to talk about him because he's also a founding member of ELO and Wizzard. So I won't talk too much about that. I'm going to let Ade talk about that. But their 4 lead vocalists were, so it had Roy Wood, Carl Wayne, whose voice is one of my favourite. I really like Carl Wayne's voice, and he'd be my choice. But also Trevor Burton and Ace Kevin. Now, the band was truly full of stars, but I just can't believe they had such a small impact in the USA. But we can only give sort of slices of info here, not the whole thing. But let's just look at their first album that was released in 1968, and it's simply called The Move. And I'll point out here their use of the four lead vocalists, which is interesting. And I hope it's interesting for me. I hope it is for you. You can go and look this up. So 1968, the album is called The Move. So the first track, Yellow Rainbow, lead vocals, Ace Kevin, Roy Wood. Next song, Kilroy Was Here, lead vocals, Roy Wood with Trevor Burton. Third track, Here We Go Around the Lemon Tree, Wood. Weekend, vocalist, Burton. Walk Upon the Water, Carl Wayne, Wood and Burton. As lead vocals, right? Lead vocals. So Flowers in the Rain, which is my pick from this album, Wayne with Wood. I'll just whip down here so I can mention this. Zing Wet the Strings of My Heart. It has Bev Bevan and Kefford as your lead vocals. So just a bit of a taste there that shows and Fire Brigade is another one worth mentioning from that album, Wood with Wayne. It gives you some idea, really just, I know it might sound a bit boring, when you listen to podcasts, what's he on about? Just to let you know, they did have 4 lead vocalists operating at that time, and they recorded that way. And so from that album, a couple of standouts would be Flowers in the Rain and Fire Brigade. Now, I'm actually going to do a bit of reading here, and I got this from Wikipedia. Without consulting the band, Secunda produced a cartoon postcode to promote the single Flowers in the Rain. It showed the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom at the time, Harold Wilson, in bed with his secretary, Marshall Williams. Wilson sued The Move for libel, and the group lost the lawsuit. They had to pay all costs and all royalties earned by the song, and so they were awarded to charities of Wilson's choice. The ruling remained in force even after Wilson's death in 1995. In the Family Trees documentary special on the Birmingham music scene, Wood says that while the band as a whole lost their royalties, it affected him the most because he had written a song, so that's Flowers in the Rain. So every time you hear that song, just think of the charities that are getting paid.
I didn't know anything about that. No,
yeah.
That's brilliant.
So I'm not going to go through every album, but I want to talk about the next album, Shazam. It was a pretty cool album, issued in 1970. The song Hello Susie, I regard it as my favourite of the Move song. It was written by Wood, but it was released by a Welsh group called Amen Corner. So technically Move's version is a cover, but it's a lot heavier than Amen Corner's version because this album has some very, very heavy parts to it. Let me say that. And Amen Corner not known for being so heavy. Don't Make My Baby Blue is also worth a mention. It's a cover of a 1963 release of Frankie Lane's, also covered by The Shadows, but very heavy version done by The Move. I think their best known song, I think this is right to say, is a 1968 single, Blackberry Way, written and sung by Wood. And apparently this is his favourite song from their catalogue. So go and have a listen to Blackberry Way. I love that song. Have a listen to it. It reached number 1 in the UK, number 14 in Australia, 10 in New Zealand, and number 4 in Rhodesia. So there's a bit of a taste of the Move for you. Widely known that Jeff Lynne joined the band and with Roy Wood and Bev Bevan created ELO. But I'm going to get Adrian to talk about that. But before we do, I'll just point out, since this is sort of Philosopher Rock and 4550 RPM show, Carl Wayne from The Move, born August 1943 in Birmingham, sadly passed away in August 2004. So over to you, Tell us a little bit about ELO and Wizzard.
So ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. They were British rock bands. They still are British rock bands. Formed in 1970 by Jeff Lynne, Roy Wood and Bev Bevan. And they became known for their unique fusion of rock and orchestral music. Similar but different to Moody Blues. They pioneered the use of string instruments with lush symphonic sounds. Their breakthrough album was this 1974 El Dorado, which had featured the hit "Can't Get You Out of My Head," and they received a widespread success with the song "Mr. Blue Sky," "Living Thing," and "Telephone Line." Their songs, selling over 50 million records worldwide during their active period. I think they went through quite a few lineup changes, like, for instance, Roy Wood didn't stick around very long. He went and formed Wizzard. But Jeff Lynne stepped back from electric light orchestra in the early 80s, but the band still carried on. But it's really interesting with Jeff Lynne. I'll probably concentrate a bit more on Jeff Lynne than anyone else. He never actually officially left. He just focused on other stuff, solo projects, and he's been back and forth with them. But he was obviously a super fan of the Beatles, and it sounds very much like he was inspired by the Beatles' later sound with like the Sgt. Pepper's orchestra arrangements, and that sort of the musical direction he went in inspired him. And how cool is this? He ended up working with his heroes. He ended up working with George Harrison on George Harrison's solo albums, and that contributed on to Harrison's post-Beatles career success. And Jeff Lynne was the only Brummie in the Travelling Wilburys, which, was the supergroup with Harrison, Roy Orbison, Tom Petty and Bob Dylan, right? And so, that was pretty awesome. And then I think even with McCartney, he's collaborating with McCartney as well. I think they appeared on a few different projects for George Harrison. I think McCartney's on one of the Wilburys tracks. I think he might be handled with care. And then Paul McCartney featured on All Those Years Ago, that song, which has got Linda and Paul doing backing vocals, and that was produced by Lynne. And I believe Lynne co-produced tracks on McCartney's 97 album, Flaming Pie. Lynne joined McCartney on The Continent for George in 2002. And in 1996, just jumping back a bit, do you remember that Beatles Anthology 1? That came out, and there was like an unreleased material of the Beatles, and they were kind of getting demos which had John Lennon on, and they, George and Ringo and Paul got together. And they were going, who's going to look after this? Who's going to produce this? And they kind of brought in Jeff Lynne. So I watched this documentary, which I've watched before, about Jeff Lynne. It's on YouTube from 2012, and I like the fact that Jeff Lynne's still got his Brummie accent like Ozzy from Black Sabbath. So the fact that he lives in probably California, Hollywood, or somewhere like Ozzy, and they've still retained their Brummie accents.
Yeah, listen, I wanted to say this earlier. Like the Brummie accent is really, from my point of view, a heavy accent, right? It's pretty easy to pick. Yours isn't very thick.
No.
I don't know if that's because of the, like you said earlier, talking to me being an Aussie, and you're been living here for a while, but they're a really thick accent, and that's really cool to hear that he retains that. He's a standout, and hey, he's a Brummie boy. He was Jeff Lynne. He was born in Birmingham, wasn't he?
He was, yeah, and he was trying to get out. I think on the spot as well, because at that time he was just kind of you work in a factory every day, that was kind of, so yeah, he didn't like getting the bus to work, and everyone was like, it was wet and dingy and
but it's worth the tour. We want people to visit. Hey, so were you going to mention that he got a star on the Birmingham Walk of Stars?
I wasn't, but I'm sure he has.
He has.
Yeah.
And he's got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame as well.
Pretty good, right? And then Roy Wood, right? So going to Wizzard, that was more of a glam rock outfit, formed in Birmingham 1972, and they had, flamboyant style, and they had two drummers, which is pretty cool, and they had like the song "See My Baby Jive" and "Angel Fingers," and so then they contributed to the glam rock of the 1970s.
Got to go online. Got to go on YouTube and look at Wizzard. The couple of different versions on there of "See My Baby Jive." The way the makeup he's wearing, and pretty crazy stuff. It's worth a look. I remember as a kid when that song came out, it was a big hit, both Australia and New Zealand. I really liked that song.
Yeah, I always liked their Christmas song. That was how I always remember that. But
Wizzard, another great product from Birmingham.
yeah, so in the it would have been the late 80s or early 90s. Roy Wood visited my local hardware shop. It's like a mum and pop shop. It was called Island Hardware in Hall Green near the Robin Hood Islands. Here's some name checks. The Robin Hood Island roundabout. I don't think he bought anything, but a good friend used to work there, and a lot of us teenagers used to hang out there after school and college and paper rounds and weekends and holidays for hours at a time. And we used to listen to music and eat there and help customers sometimes. But yeah, I always remember my friends, hey, you never guess what? Roy Wood came in and he was looking for, I can't remember what he was looking for now, but that was, we'd always be, there would be either Roy Wood or there was a comedian called Jasper Carrot who came in a couple of times. And there was Napalm Death, the band Napalm Death, they're getting the name check there. And they would be on the bus, or some of the members would be on the bus sometimes that would go past. There we go. And the band Birdland as well. So I've knocked a few bands, Birmingham-related bands out there.
Yeah, and all related to a hardware store.
Yeah, all in the old hardware shop, which is no longer there. It became a KFC, and then it was something else. And I think last time I looked, everything was closed down there. It's all boarded up. So yeah.
All right. Well, that's cool, man. That's no, that was good. That's a personal touch that you can bring because you're a Brum lad yourself, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Alrighty, I just want to make a bit of a short mention here of Chrstine Mcvie. I know some people might say Mcvie, I say Mcvie. I was planning to do a whole episode about her on 4550. I may yet do that, but since she has Birmingham connections, I thought I'd make a bit of a brief mention here. So she wasn't born in Birmingham, but she grew up near there. So, we can almost claim her. Yeah, Lancashire, right? All right. So, as I say, I was going to do a 4550 and, because she's born in July 1943 and sadly died age 79 in 2022. She has a connection with the Spencer Davis group because she had son with Spencer Davis. She'd had son with him in her early years at some point. I just can't remember what that was, but there was that bit of a connection there as well. But she played in a blues band called Chicken Shack, another Birmingham band, and she played piano, keyboards, and was a backing vocalist for them on 2 albums. Now, Chicken Shack were known for their early use of using Marshall stacks and for being very loud. At this time, she was already a fan of Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac and Chicken Shack, the bands, had crossed paths on the touring circuit back in the day, and they were both signed to the same record label. And she had worked as the session muso on the Fleetwood Mac album Mr. Wonderful. So there's those connections early on with Fleetwood Mac. And in 1970, she released a solo album called Chrstine Perfect because her name she was born with is Chrstine Perfect. And that was her name before she married John Mcvie from Fleetwood Mac. So she married John Mcvie. I'll just point this out. And Pete Green from Fleetwood Mac was their best man at their wedding. So
right.
And we did a whole episode on Philosopher Rock devoted to Pete Green. So go onto the YouTube channel, just hit the Philosopher Rock playlist and look for our special we did on Pete Green. So Chrstine released a solo album after Chicken Shack and before she joined Fleetwood Mac. And so she was invited to join the Mac as a keyboard player, I think in 1970. And it was after Pete Green had left the band. She had already contributed piano and backing vocals, uncredited apparently, to their album Kiln House. And she provided the artwork for the sleeves, so there's another connection there. The Fleetwood Mac album Future Games, released in 1970, was the first one of theirs that she appears as a full member of the band. And, I said this is going to be short. I don't want to get into the whole Fleetwood Mac catalogue here, but it's fair to say she's a major contributor to their success, having written some of the biggest hits, as well as singing lead vocals on a number of tunes. So she wrote Over My Head, Say You Love Me. She sang lead vocals on those. She also wrote Don't Stop and had shared lead vocals on that with Lindsay Buckingham. She wrote and sang Songbird from the same album. Rumours, which was a huge seller to say the least. She also wrote and sung lead on Oh Daddy and You Make Loving Fun from that album. I think it's just enough for a small taste of another person with Brum connection.
Yeah, you were right. She was born in Lancashire, and she grew up in Bearwood, which is 4 miles away from Birmingham. Yeah. So
you've got aunties and uncles then.
I did. Yeah, nice. Yeah. From my notes, her father was a concert violinist and a music lecturer from St Peter's College, Saltley, in Birmingham, and her mother was a medium, psychic, and faith healer. Wow, there you go. So she'd be a good one to do the Philosopher rock on, I reckon.
I have a list, and she's on that list. So, hey, so do you want to hit us with a little bit of Black Sabbath?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So, of all the bands from Birmingham, I'd say Sabbath is the most Birmingham band. You can't get more Brummy than Sabbath. They captured that dark and dirty vibe of the working class industrial city of that time. That probably started to evaporate in the 1990s. They started to clean up the city after that. So they were formed in Aston in Birmingham in 1968. Aston being famous for the Aston Villa Football Club. And, I'm sure people know the story. They were originally a heavy blues rock band named Earth. I think there was something before that as well. And obviously they became known for their dark and heavy sound and lyrics. And that marks new era for rock music, as in heavy metal. And the name Black... What's... Yeah, totally. Yeah. And their name, Black Sabbath, was inspired by the 1963 horror film of the same name, starring Boris Karloff. Have you seen that?
I can't remember.
Okay, I haven't seen it. Anyway, so there's Tony Iommi, Bill Ward, Geezer Butler, and Ozzy Osbourne.
Early Black Sabbath lyrics were mostly written by Osbourne and bassist Geezer Butler, with Butler shaping the band's themes through horror and dark fantasy. So the exploration of occult themes and imagery became a hallmark for their music. Geezer Butler had a fascination with the occult, drawing inspiration from Aleister Crowley and horror literature, including works by Dennis Wheatley. Iommi and Bill Ward were less vocal about their beliefs, but contributed to the band's darker themes. So as far as I know, their early fascination with the occult served more as a thematic choice than a reflection of personal beliefs, enhancing the music's atmospheric style. Later negative experiences with the occult led them to distance themselves from it. I know you, GK, and Brian already discussed the period when Ronnie James Dio, who's not from Birmingham, was in Black Sabbath in a previous Philosopher's Rock episode. Okay, their most famous song would be War Pigs, Paranoid, and Iron Man, but probably my favourite Sabbath song is After Forever, from their third album, Master of Reality, showcasing Geezer Butler's awesome songwriting skills.
Particularly Ozzy Osbourne, Sabbath were a global band, but Ozzy Osbourne has had a super successful solo career and had TV shows and everything about him. But I wanted to actually concentrate a bit more on Tony Iommi, because the story, he lost part of his finger in a factory accident at the age of 17. So he was working in a Birmingham factory at that age, and he was playing guitar at the time. But this injury forced him to adapt his playing style, and which evolved, so he cut the tips of his fingers off, 2 of his fingers, and he had to go to using a lighter gauge string and tune his guitar down, and that part of that contributes to his heavy sound that defined the Black Sabbath sound. And also he, the guy I mentioned earlier, the guitarist, D'Angelo Reinhardt, is an old-time guitar player. Anyway, he'd burned his playing hands and had to adapt to playing differently, and that inspired Tony to kind of, he made these little tips for his fingers, and I think they were made from washing up liquid bottles, and then later leather. Documentaries on him, he's got like a box full of different fingertips, but it's almost like, for me, it's like a superhero origin story. How Tony Iommi kind of discovered the heavy metal sound, due to what happened. It's like something like due to exposure of radiation, transforms someone into the Hulk, or a young person is dousing chemicals and they go blind, but it gives them heightened senses, or maybe, just the enhanced spider bite, he's a teenager, and then it gives him spider powers and he creates his own web shooters. So that's how I was thinking of it the other day. And obviously, they've always had the name Black Sabbath from the film, but also the imagery of their first album cover. They kind of had that. I think Geezer Butler, the bass player, was the main lyricist, and I really like his song "After Forever." If you check that out, he wrote that for Black Sabbath. But they had that Aleister Crowley, Dennis Wheatley connection, which I think. Geezer Butler was reading their stuff at the time, but they kind of weren't really into the whole dark occult stuff, but it was kind of used for their imagery. But Ozzy Osbourne flew with that, because he became known as the Prince of Darkness and also the Godfather of heavy metal, so he kind of flew with that one. And that's everything I've got on Black Sabbath.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, yeah, I was just going to mention the covers band I was in. We always, if I remember right, we always opened our shows with Paranoid.
Okay, yeah.
Black Sabbath, Paranoid, and sort of hit the audience between the eyes so they knew what they were in for. Alrighty, that's the end of Brum Music Part 1 with Aussie Ade. Check back soon for Part 2, and remember, if you like what we do here, just hit that like button.